Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and presented by Rockpoint Bank and EPB. Rockpoint Bank, from Chattanooga for Chattanooga. And EPB, get EPB's fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Darde Long. Darde is the president and CEO of the Chattanooga Zoo, where she has worked and risen through the ranks since 1985. Darde, before we trace your career journey at the Chattanooga Zoo, growing it from just 2 employees to now more than 80, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Well, it's black coffee, 2 cups if I'm lucky, 1 cup if I'm in a hurry.
Are you a Keurig person, a drip person? Or?
Well, I'd love drip. I actually like really, really good coffee, but Keurig works great for me.
Yeah.
My lifestyle is grab it and go, so it works out really well.
Have you tried an espresso machine?
No, I'm afraid I'd get addicted to it. I really love espresso.
We used to do a lot of drip coffee, and I'd fix a pot and I'd be drinking coffee, or I'd do Keurigs and I'd drink.
Mm-hmm.
The Nespresso is so bold that I'm good after 1 or 2 cups.
Oh, I'll have to try that.
And I get a cut of each one sold. So, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I moved here in 2000, and so the zoo was not where it is today, but you brought it from even before that, back in 1985. And I want to talk about the zoo and where the zoo is, but I first want to learn more about Darde Long. You grew up here. Born and raised here?
Born and raised in Chattanooga, and I've been here, went to school here, did go to a brief stint at Auburn. But, I grew up primarily in Brainerd Hills. My parents moved there. My mom thought it was great because it had a swimming pool in the neighborhood. And that's where I've lived all my life. In fact, I'm 4 doors down from where my mom used to live.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up at that time in that area?
I loved the neighborhood. We had so much fun. We were always on our bikes. But then when I was 9, I got a pony, and it was tied in my backyard, just so you get a feel for what the neighborhood was like then. And I rode it all around the neighborhood and just had a grand old time. We even had a little buggy that he would pull, and we could sit in the buggy and drive around. It was a lot of fun.
Now, the image is a young 9-year-old girl getting a pony.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen? Because I've never known anyone that's gotten a pony.
Well, I was quite persistent. I think my parents thought that might shut me up for a while, and that I would maybe grow disinterested after a while, but it did not happen that way at all. In fact, it was really ironic. Down the street, less than a quarter of a mile, there was this big old horse barn, and they had horses there. I'd seen them before, but I didn't really know anything about it. Well, it was vacated, and my parents found out, and they decided to lease the barn so that I'd have a place to put my pony.
Wow.
And then my horse, and then another horse, and then another horse. And then in order to pay for all that, we had to start boarding horses. So that's how I got into, the horse scene, and how long I stayed in it was really because it was a little bit of a side business for me.
Was that Dardanelle Stables?
Yes.
And that is that the origin of your name, Darde and Dardanelle?
Actually, the origin of my name comes from my dad, who was traveling during World War II, and he was over in Greece and Turkey and in that area. He was doing construction, and he saw the Dardanelles, and he already had a daughter from a previous marriage, but he said if he ever had another girl, he'd name her Dardanelle.
Well,
I like
that.
When I was a kid, I hated it, though. It's just such a mouthful. But now I really, relish it and use it a lot more than I used to.
It's funny you say that, which when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you want your name to be just like everyone else's.
Yeah, and mine wasn't anyway.
and my middle name growing up, my middle initial is J. Not my middle name growing up. It's still my middle name because I'm not grown up. But my middle name is Jude. J-U-D, like the saint.
Yo.
And there's another story behind that. But as a kid growing up, it was like, oh, that's a girl's name. So I just tell everyone Joseph, which is, it's okay. My dad's name was Joseph. But I'll tell you the Jude thing about being named after Saint Jude, the patron saint of hopeless causes.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So I don't know what my mother was trying to tell me.
That's interesting. And I don't think it worked out that way for you. I'm glad.
Well, I'm still pretty hopeless. So did you have any siblings?
No, I have a half-sister, she's 18 years older than I am, and so
Oh,
she was my dad's first
yeah.
marriage, and so I actually had a couple of nephews growing up that were, like, 5 or 6 years younger than I was, so it was kind of an interesting relationship, but they lived in Atlanta for a while, so we weren't awfully close.
But you're a young kid growing up, basically only child,
Oh, yes.
and 9 years old, and you get a pony.
Yep, spoiled rotten.
Yeah, spoiled rotten. Did that kick off your love of animals?
I don't think it kicked it off. I always loved dogs, and we had them when always had animals around the house, but I think that really started something, and I decided along the same time that I wanted to be a veterinarian, and that was
Mhm.
a pretty young age to make that decision,
How old
but
were you?
9,
9? You wanted to be a
10,
vet?
yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
be a vet, so, we had a large animal veterinarian that took care of all the horses at the barn, and I think he recognized my passion was real, and as I got a little bit older, he would let me do things, give me injections to give the horses and all
Really?
that. He really trusted me, and by this time, I'm a young, teenager, but he really was a huge, emphasis on what I did and where I went, and I always thought I could tackle those big horses just fine.
Mhm.
Problem was the only vet school at the time was at Auburn or Georgia,
I didn't know
and
that.
no, there was no veterinary school because 'cause I'm old, you see, and
But Tennessee's got a pretty
well, they didn't
wealth.
have it in 1970. They think they opened it in '76 or
Was it
'77.
was it
So I
76,
went to
77?
Auburn in 1975 with
Oh,
a hope to get in Auburn Veterinary School, which is gonna be very difficult,
yeah.
and I remember that Dr. Harper advised me, "Don't work too hard. All you have to do is pass. Don't kill yourself." He was very good because he knew I was really dedicated and wanted to get in, and school was tough because all I did that I was so focused on getting really good grades because I think they took 2 students from Tennessee into Auburn Vet School at the time. So, yeah,
Wow.
pretty competitive.
So you go down to Auburn, how was that experience?
It was great. I loved it so much, and I really and truly, if I'm sad about one thing in my life, I was sad. My dad got sick. My mom was killing herself. It was time to come back home. Hope to get back, and took some classes at UTC, kind of trying to stay in it, but it just wasn't the right time for
Yeah.
me to be gone from home.
I'm thinking back to that early decision as a kid to wanna be a vet, and I think about, like, when we bring our dog to the vet,
Mhm.
and the assistants they have tend to be high school kids.
Mhm.
What is it about particularly animals that's and this the I'm gonna use the term, someone gets bit with the bug,
Oh, yeah.
that this is what I wanna do. Why how does it become a passion?
I wish I had an answer for that because it is something that is truly it is a passion. It is a bug that's bitten you. If you don't have it, you're not as dedicated to, but even with my keeper staff now, and they're all very, very good, but some of them are just insane, like good. And
Yeah.
they're usually the ones like me that'll work late and stay late and, do that. Same thing with horses. They were 365 days a year. So I learned that you had to be committed, but I just loved it. And I can't explain it. I just, say the good Lord made me that way. And made me to be the one that probably gets, too sad over dogs in the road and not sad enough over car wrecks
Yeah.
because that's the way I am.
Well, it's a passion and a compassion.
It is, it is. You're exactly right, and I think that, something strikes me when I'm around animals, and to this day, even though I'm almost all business in the office, raising money, doing whatever, I still love doing tours where I can go out and, say, "Oh, let's get the giraffes to come over, and, we'll
Yeah.
feed them," and it makes my day. I mean, it really does, and so I'm so glad that my office is about 30 steps away from a little porch where I can go out and look at giraffes.
Now, as growing up, I know you were working in the stables and working with animals.
Mhm.
Did you do any other jobs that didn't involve animals?
It's it's funny you asked that. I actually went to work for the Goonie Golf Corporation at the time doing bookkeeping type stuff. My mom was a bookkeeper, and I went in and helped her with that some for a while, but then it was, between that and school, it was just really hard to do, but at UT, they didn't have great pre-vet classes, and it was hard. I mean, there weren't any really labeled that, and so it was just really hard, so I decided that if I was going to work with animals, perhaps I should look at another field so that I could afford my habit because horses are expensive.
Mhm.
So I got into some accounting classes at UTC, and I thought, well, this is good. I'll do this. And, I was piddling around with that, but still had my horses, still had that. So, it was just one of those things that I worked there, but then I realized this is not what I want to do. And so I went back to doing the horses in school full time. And then, gosh, I guess it was 1982. I was down at the clinic working down at the, veterinary hospital where I took my animals, and, they said, "We have a job opening." And I was like, "Really? Yeah, if you wanna be an assistant, wow, that's quite I can make money doing something I love."
Mhm.
And so 1982, I joined Bowles& Martin Animal Hospital.
So you're getting your accounting
Yeah.
background and degree. You go work at the animal
Uh-huh.
hospital in accounting, and they recognize your passion for
Oh, yeah.
animals.
Oh, yeah.
How important was it for you to kinda have that experience on the business side? Not from, "Oh, it'll help me in years to come," but to be able to identify that, "You know what? I like being around this atmosphere, but I'd rather work with the animals than track their
Yes.
cost."
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it really showed me that that's not what I wanted to do, but to this day, I don't regret it at all because I learned so much, and it's really been helpful in the career path I ended up taking, so kind of funny.
Yeah, did and I'm thinking just career paths and you're on one track to go in the business and you're in was there ever a discussion, an argument in your head of, "Boy, if you go this way, it's gonna be a lot harder, maybe financially, than if you go this way." Did any of that ever come into
I don't think money really played into it. The only thing that I saw when I got that job was a chance to make money doing something I loved. I mean, and the accounting and stuff went flying out
Yeah.
the window because I knew that's where I needed to be.
Well, and that's something we try and talk a lot about on this podcast is finding your passion
Yeah.
and doing something you love. So you could probably lump yourself into that group of, "I've never worked a day in my life," because
I think that's true. There are times when you certainly do feel like, and especially when you, work with animals, because I think the days that you do feel like it's work are the days that you lose animals. And
yeah.
unfortunately, we lose animals, and we did at the clinic. One of my first stops there was working on a Sunday afternoon for an emergency case that came in with a young man whose dog had been hit by a car.
Ooh.
And unfortunately, we couldn't. It completely tore me up. This young man was just crying copiously, and I was stunned but at some point, the doctor I was working with was so kind and helped so much that it kinda helped me understand this is a part of it, we have to do what we can, but those are the days that are like work, and I still have them, unfortunately, because no animal except the tortoises, and they're really gonna outlive me, but that's another topic.
But I get what you're saying 'cause we've had to put dogs down,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and it's never easy.
No.
They become part of your
Oh,
family,
yeah.
and having someone at that vet office who gets it
Mhm.
is more important. That's what you remember
Oh,
about going to the vet
sure.
is not the technical stuff. It's how did they make me feel when I was losing my dog,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, I when I started, Dr. Oogie Martin, who's been did so much for this community. He was an amazing man.
I
He was
remember him.
yeah, and he was really involved with Humane Society when they were struggling so, but Auburn graduate and just a tremendous he kinda saved one of our dogs, and so I kinda knew about that, and I really wanted to go to work for him, but then he didn't need me, but this young whippersnapper that had just joined them, named Mickey Myers, actually, needed an assistant, and so I got to go to work for him, and oh my goodness, to this day, we're friends. But he was such a good veterinarian, and he inspired me so much, and the surgeries he did and all of that, I got the bug again
Yeah.
and tried to take some more classes, but I was about 3 years in with the veterinary hospital when the job at the zoo came up, so I'm already in.
So as you're on this track, uh, are you completely focused on animals and that or what are you doing for fun that kinda takes your mind away from it?
Well, that's just it. I still had horses and I still did all that, and so I had a lot of fun with that. We didn't clean our own stalls, but, later on as I grew and was working, we had, people come in and do it, but it was still what I loved, and I had horses, my gosh, I guess one of them lived to be about 40, so I had them for a long time, but they were kinda retired, and once I started, at the zoo, it was one of those things where I kinda knew I needed to get out of that business. Dogs are a lot more tolerant. Horses
Yeah.
get colic if you don't feed them on time.
Oh, did you say you had a horse that was 40?
Yeah.
I didn't know horses lived that long.
It was actually a pony, and ponies will live longer, and he was right at I think he was maybe 39, gonna turn 40, I can't remember, but yeah, he was ancient.
Now, I'm gonna show my ignorance. You say ponies live longer. See, when I hear pony, I think baby horse.
Now, pony are a separate species, like, separate breed, and they're small, like miniature horses are even different, but ponies are something that have been around, and horses are just a larger version, I don't know where the ponies actually
So what do you call a
originated.
baby horse?
A foal?
Oh, well, there you go. Shows you what I know.
Colt or a filly as they get older.
Then why did I always think pony?
Well, just because small, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's a little horse and it looks like a, baby horse. So, but yeah, no, some of them get to be quite old.
Yeah, wow, 40 years old. So you're working through all that. You obviously got the love of animals. Talk about that transition from working with the vets and the opportunity at the zoo.
It was so funny because one of the veterinarians at this that worked at the practice, I had worked for him some, opened his own practice, and it was ironic because he was actually contracted to take care of the zoo animals, and it was tiny then; there wasn't a lot there. But I actually encountered a couple of zoo animals long before it was on my radar at the clinic that came over for treatment. A spider monkey that we put in ICU, and then there was a black-backed jackal that bit me. So
Jackal?
yeah, they're kind of funny. They're like the size of a fox, and he just
That sounds
like
painful.
it was. But, it was just kind of ironic how I bumped up against that. So he leaves, opens his own practice, and is continuing to do the vet work, and he stops by the zoo one day, and he said, there's an opening for a zookeeper at the zoo. You should apply for it. And I'm like, Brett, I don't know anything about wild animals, and he said, you'd be surprised how much you know compared to, what's working there now. And I said, oh, I don't know. He said, well, just look into it. So I did, and again, I'm very concerned about my lack of knowledge about those species, but I went over there, and the zoo was what it was in 1985. It was pretty rough. It
Well,
was concrete and just all concrete and fencing. The animals looked okay, but it was just so sad. Everybody's in a pen, if you will.
Yeah, kinda like they were all in jail.
Yes, exactly. In fact, Hank the chimpanzee had bars because of their strength. Chain link won't hold him, and he had these bars up and down, which really made him look like he was in jail. And so he was by himself. There was a hyena by himself. There were a lot of animals that were solos, so it was kind of just a menagerie more than a zoo.
How many animals they have at that time?
Wow.
Just a handful?
Yeah, just a handful. I'm trying to think. You don't count all the chickens and stuff, but probably 25, 30, maybe.
Yeah.
And then some goats. I didn't count those.
So he tells you there's an opening, and you're like, I don't know.
I mean,
What
I'm quite happy where I am.
what made you do it?
Now the money comes into it. No, so seriously, you're working as a vet tech. Oh God, what was I making? $4.35 an hour, I think. And, that's not a career, but I was really happy. I was still living at home with my mom, so I didn't have a lot of expenses. But when you look ahead, and you think about life down the road, it was like, wow, this might be a chance for me to work with animals that actually is a career, not just a passing, thing that I do. I knew I couldn't be a vet assistant all my life if I was going to be independent. So I applied for it on a lark, got called in for an interview. And then it was interesting because all of these people started writing bad letters about the zoo, saying the city needed to close it down. It wasn't worth opening. The animals were pitiful. And it was sad. When you walked in, it felt sad. But I'm like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to leave the steady job and go to work here. But I didn't think I would get it. I never thought I would get the job because I didn't have any zoo experience. And when I found that they were down to 2, me and a guy from California that had worked in a zoo, I'm like, oh, well, no problem. So I was so relaxed in the interview. I really didn't think I'd get it. Jim Eberly was one of my people that interviewed me, and Jim was just such a wonderful commissioner of public utilities, which is where the zoo was in. And he was so nice. And then there was a volunteer guy because Friends of the Zoo had just formed, and they were the ones driving the, publicity to do something at the zoo. So I was kind of scared of them, but they asked how I felt about working with volunteers. I said, I've been working with kids who just wanted to be around horses for a long time. I understand how to put them to work and make them helpful, And then they called me and told me I had the job.
Wow.
I cried.
Did you really?
I didn't want to leave. It was such a huge, I loved that clinic so much, and I loved being so close to the veterinary part. But my dear friend, Dr. Mickey, sort of said, you got to do this, this is what you need to do. And so I did it. Here I am.
How important was it for you to hear that from him?
Really important. Good friend. I trusted him. He was like a brother to me. And his skill set with animals and watching his kindness and compassion, I knew that I couldn't go back to vet school at that point, even though I thought I would at one point try. But he was just was so steady, and he just knew, and he was an Auburn graduate, so I trusted him.
So for someone listening to this podcast who may not have that kind of relationship with someone that they trust like that, who can help form their career, what kind of effect can that have for someone? And like you as an example, why should someone who's listening to seek out that kind of mentor?
Well, I think we all need some affirmation, especially with the big decisions in life. We need someone who knows us to help us look at the situation realistically. I was a really good assistant, so for him to kick me out the door
Yeah.
was a tough decision,
He
but
could have been selfish and said, "Nah, you don't wanna go there."
exactly, and, but he didn't, and I think it was because he could see and the future, and looking at the future, I think there was something in me that was saying, "You know you can't do this forever. What are you going to do if you can't be a veterinarian? Then what are your options?"
Yeah.
And so it really was not that hard to make the decision.
And when you went, how old were you?
Well, I don't know, 28.
28.
Mhm.
So you're really starting a new career, for lack of better.
Yeah, you ask about other jobs and sort of sprinkled in between, working at the clinic when I worked nighttime at, oh, good Olin Mills, in a little place selling Olin Mills packages.
Really?
I hated being on the phone, so then I started delivering them. I just needed extra money, which
Yeah.
when you think of that's probably how I ended up kind of coming to the decision. I don't wanna work 2 jobs all my life, and that's kind of what helped me make the decision, but I was really good.
Yeah. So you were selling Olin Mills school packages?
But not the school ones, just the personal portrait packages. I'd
Mhm.
call and tell them what we had, and Olin Mills just thought I was wonderful and wanted to give me my own space, and I was like, "Oh, oh, oh, no, no, no."
I don't wanna do this my whole life.
Yeah, this is not what I had in mind, but it was also hard keeping up the 2 jobs, so that
Yeah.
you're kinda starting reality starting to set in a little bit.
So you're 28, you're leaving a comfortable veterinary practice
Yes,
where you love what you're doing,
yes.
and they obviously love you, and you're going to the zoo who's got problems.
Yeah.
And so you're 28 and you're walking in that first day. What are your impressions and what are you thinking?
Well, the funny thing is, they asked me to start early because there were 2 part-time young ladies that were working there that they really wanted me to meet, that were only working for the summer maybe, and they really felt like they could help me kinda get integrated, and then there was a lovely gentleman named Frank Reno, and that was it. That was all it was at the zoo.
2
T
part-timers and Frank.
and 2 full-time positions. So he was a laborer and I was the zookeeper, and that made me the head of the zoo, and it was really funny because there wasn't much to be the head of. I mean, but it was I was in charge of all the animals, and what happened there, it was suddenly my
At
responsibility.
28.
Mhm, and considering I'd never managed that's not true. I did manage horses and I managed money, so I had some inkling of that with the, animals that I had at the boarding stables, but it was just such an interesting situation because he was probably in his late 50s when I
Mhm.
started and really tough guy, didn't seem he was kind of overweight and just did his job, but loved the animals, took really good care of the animals, and they loved him, so I learned a lot from him, and he was very good about accepting me as this young person coming into his life and destroying it.
Did you ever feel walking in any, imposter syndrome, like, "Oh my god, if they do ha that I'm not prepared for this."
Yeah. I think it was just the sheer realizing that when the girls left there and they worked with me for a week. I worked for Manpower, I think, a temp agency just to get me in with them until they could get me on with the zoo. And so, I remember, "Oh, it's gonna be me and Frank." And, that was a challenge because if one of us was sick, then the
Yeah.
other one had to do the whole zoo.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wanna go back a little bit to the boarding stable
Mhm.
and riding horses. Did you teach horseback riding
I
also?
did.
Talk a little bit about that, 'cause what you see is someone helps you up on the saddle, and then they bring out the gentlest horse, or
Mhm.
what's the process of learning how to ride?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question. I don't know where I got the bug, but I knew how to ride, my parents would take me. There was this wonderful old place off of Airport Road close to our house where you could ride horses around in a circle,
Mhm.
ponies and horses, and I did that as much as I could, but that was about it. So when I got this pony, it was a lot of learning, and I often laugh and say I fell off of him more times than I could count because we'd be trotting down the road in the neighborhood, it was before there were asphalt, and he'd take a hard left and I'd keep going. So, constantly falling off and scraping knees and getting smashed faces and all,
Yeah.
but the process, I think about just learning to understand, making sure you have calm horses. And I had a couple that were really good. And then I bought a couple that were, that I could use as extras. So I didn't have to always use my babies. And so they were calm and quiet. And I would stand down in the middle of a riding ring in my barn and they would go around in circles and I would offer encouragement and we'd just start off slow.
Can a horse sense when the rider is nervous?
Yes. So you need some that are just used to it and have been ridden a lot. I
Mhm.
mean, I had a really big, and if you know about horses, 17 hands is a pretty good sized
Yeah.
horse, and, he was really good. I think when he sensed not that I was afraid, but that I was off balance, he would stop, throw up his head, and I think it bothered him that he could feel my balance shifting. I'm not saying he just did it to help me, but it did help me. I didn't fall off because he was big. But I think that you just have they do shift it. So you have to find a horse that's really patient and, understands what's happening and doesn't there are all kinds of horses, so
How about dealing with, the riders, the people you're teaching to ride? What was the experience of that, and what was a takeaway for you?
It was really fun because I started with some youngsters there at the barn that just had their own horses and wanted to get a little better at what they're doing. Then I had some adults that were really fun. They had wanted horses all their life, so they took riding lessons. The children were probably a little more fun for me, but one of them was a little blonde-haired girl, and she was so just into horses. She was like a little mini-me, and she rode my pony to the point that I let her take him to horse shows and do stuff like that, and so, that was how I kind of got into it, but, most people, again, it's the same thing. Some people just really wanted to do it because they always wanted to do it. Some people just have that passion for it, and it was just something that was going to happen, and I was glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned horse shows.
Mhm.
So when you were riding, were you doing any of that?
I
Yeah,
was.
what
Load
kind
up the trailer and off you go with the horse and the pony because I still showed the
were
pony.
you jumping or just showing?
No, just showing I rode English Pleasure for the most part and showed an equitation, which is a riding ability, kind of
Mhm.
how they judge it. So I did both of those a lot.
My first job, 8th grade, was the Germantown Charity Horse Show.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, that's right, because you're from Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never got to go there. I went to the Nashville show,
Mhm.
and I got, like, 5th place, and I thought I was doing really well because it's a big show.
Well, our job, we had 2 jobs. During the day, we first had to build the stalls
Oh.
and then had to clean them,
Oh, yeah.
and then we were on the jump crew for the jumping
Oh,
horses.
yeah. No, I always wanted to do that. My mother did not want me to be on.
Uh,
She could not, but I jumped my pony anyway. There's some wonderful video that still
yeah.
exists of me jumping my little pony over whatever I could find.
Well, and I could tell you as a kid, you're watching them jump, and it's kinda natural, and it's beautiful. But as I get older, it's like, "Oh my god, they got these 2 tons going over a rail," or
Yeah.
however much they weigh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it can be very dangerous. I jumped my big horse too. He was really good at it, but like I said, my mom just was not supportive, and you know
Yeah.
what? She was really supportive of me. She was at the barn every day. She helped it. She did retired from work, and that was what she did, and my dad was involved on the front end, so I wasn't gonna go rogue and make her life miserable.
So all of this kinda prepares you for walking in that first day.
It does, it does. It certainly didn't it was a little overwhelming, but, everybody was very nice to me.
And what was a typical day at the zoo like at that time? 'Cause I wanna contrast it later on to today, so
Well, you go in, and usually the first thing you do is check all the animals. Depending if Frank was there, he would start cleaning the cages, and I would start a lot of times diet preparation. We had a little tiny kitchen, and we ordered produce and food for the animals. They had a pretty good diet. I was kind of surprised that it was and I'm sure the veterinarian that had worked there had advised them. But getting food ready, and then out you'd go with your food bowls, and you'd take them around and park, and you'd start shifting the animal inside his holding, and you'd go in his cage and you'd clean.
how about guests? How many people were coming through on a
There were
typical day?
actually a fair number because the zoo was free at that time.
Uh,
So there was a fair number of people coming through. And one of the things that I really enjoyed, there's a kinkajou there named Kinky, ironically, and he was so furry and so wonderful. And I'd never seen an animal like him at all. He was just wonderful, this tail, and, it's just so pretty. And so he wouldn't let you pet him, but he liked bananas. And so I would go in and sit in this little cage. I had to bend down to go in it, but he would come out, and I finally got him to the point where he would climb up on my knee and sit there and eat the banana. Still didn't want to be petted, but gosh, people loved that. They loved seeing the interaction. And that kind of taught me a little bit about what was to come, which was that it's really important to teach people when they come in, not just put on a show, to teach people about what you're doing and to engage them. And I think I was pretty good at that because I enjoyed it so much.
yeah. So that educational aspect
Yeah.
really opened it up for, guests.
Sure. Yeah.
At what point when you're there, talk a little bit about your career track when you were there, because you come in as a zookeeper. There's only 2 of you.
Right, so I'm in charge. You have to think
Yeah.
about that. I'm the one in charge. So
Yeah.
then I was there for a little while, and I realized I needed some help. I do wanna along came Friends of the Zoo about that time with the volunteer corps, and they made a real difference. Soon after I started, they started trickling in, and they would help do all sorts of things, but I remember very fondly, Vance and his mother, and I can't remember her name, but she would come every Saturday and fix diets. Now, let me tell you how great that was, because you could go out and do the things you didn't have time to do, because Jane would fix all of the diets. Jean and Vance would do it.
And when you say fixed diets, fixing their meals.
Fixing their meals, yeah, we call them diets, but
Yeah.
they would chop all the produce up into appropriate sizes, dump the right number of biscuits in, all of that sort of thing.
So that's Friends of the Zoo
Yes.
helping with that? At what point are you looking and going, boy, if we start to do this or that, we're really going to improve the zoo?
I think that we started trying to make improvements right away with the aesthetics. There wasn't much we could do. Everything was still what it was. But I think that we really did a good job in cleaning it up and making it look better, and, and having people that were in the zoo that were volunteers to talk to people when they came in. I think we realized that we needed to do that. But then I'm trying to remember. I think the first thing that really caught us and said we need to get bigger is that we had someone that wanted to donate a jaguar to us. Now, it was a baby jaguar.
What are they cleaning out the house and they go, hey, I got this jaguar and I'll just take it down to the zoo?
No, it was actually a group that traveled, and something we frown upon a lot now. But you got to remember, that was the 80s. But the people that go around and let you get pictures made with animals, baby animals, that was a really big thing. And I had to go see it just because I didn't know what it was. And they offered to donate one of their cubs to the zoo. And I was like, okay. So we moved some stuff around, made some room, and created this nice area, but it was a cage still, and it's like concrete, but we put all this bedding in it and made it look really pretty, and we got Sasha Jaguar.
And this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm curious about it. And you're right, there are carnivals and things like that, and animals. How much is that on a zookeeper's radar to know that there's an industry out there that lack of a better term is exploiting animals, and what do you feel your obligation is to help, again, lack of a better term, rescue those animals?
I think in certain cases you certainly can rescue. It's hard because most zoos don't have capacity just to take in anything. There's some things that have happened on a congressional level. There's something called the Big Cat Safety Act that prohibits large animals from people getting their pictures made and all of that kind of thing. There's some things that have taken place, but as a culture, it's very strict now that we don't exploit animals. It doesn't mean you don't occasionally get your picture made with something up close, but you don't get to cuddle it. You don't get to do that kind of thing. We have a couple of servals that actually go out into the public, and they'll jump up on a table and stand, and if you're, you can walk over and stand by them, but no cuddling and no doing that sort of thing, because it just encourages the wrong kind of behavior where people think, oh, I can get this for a pet.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
Well, and that's where I was going with it. Anyone that's watched The Hangover, you got Mike Tyson and his tiger.
Yeah. And people still do.
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of videos online of people who have wild cats as pets. And I think what they forget, and hopefully you can reinforce this, is they're wild animals. You can't make them a pet.
And they just will sometimes be temperamental and react instinctively. And I think I actually just saw something on Siegfried and Roy not too long ago, and they had the white tigers in Las Vegas, and when he was injured, it seemed that the thought was the animal didn't mean to hurt him and picked him up and tried to carry him. I don't know if that's true or not, because that would be instinctive to move your injured baby. But I also think that something that just caused him to snap, that's what's so scary about it. And I've seen them do the same thing at the zoo. 1 minute we're fine and 1 minute we are not, So it really reinforces that people don't need to get them as pets and and it's expensive. Feeding these animals is so expensive. And we get confiscations from time to time. I've had 2 cougars come through that were confiscations as adults. And then we got 2 more, probably 10 years ago, that were found out in Montana. I believe that their mother had been killed.
2 cougars?
Mm-hmm, 2 cubs, yeah.
Wow. You come into the zoo and your first promotion is to zoo supervisor.
Yes.
How's that different from what you were doing? Was the zoo growing and you were bringing more people in?
Partially that, and we had hired maybe by then 2-3 extra people, which is that's really something to accomplish with the city when you're trying to get a new position. So it took me a while, but I managed to get them to let me hire a couple of things. And by this time, I think we had accrued. I think we got the Jaguars in '88 and '89, so we'd started to kind of grow our collection, and it was time for more help. And so that made me more of a supervisor than just supervising one guy.
So when you want to grow something that is under the city's control, talk about that process of trying to add someone and what that takes.
Oh, Mayor Kelly's still really good to us.
Well,
but no, the truth is the process is very arduous, and it does take a long time, and you have to go through so many steps. Meanwhile, Friends of the Zoo started hiring a few people, which was amazing. So we had this sort of underscored group that would come in and work with us part-time, helping with education, helping with diet prep, helping with animal care. And so we had a pretty good core group of volunteers that had sort of moved over into the employee process.
Well, and explain a little bit about how Friends of the Zoo interacts with the zoo itself, because you mentioned they started to hire some people. So are you parallel organizations? Or?
Well, today, Friends of the Zoo manages the zoo. They took that over in 2010. But back then, they just supported us however they could. We sold T-shirts, and it was usually zoo employees or Friends of the Zoo employees that did that sort of thing for us. So they worked side by side and really showed what can happen if you do put some more investment into the zoo, and they helped us take strides that we didn't have the funding to do back then, and it was really a huge help, and they helped us start raising money. I think the first big exhibit that we built was in 1992. We built Hank, that chimpanzee, a brand new Hank's Playhouse, and it was just this big 20 by 40 foot, still chain link and, poles, but much better and much taller and much nicer. So we raised the money to do that and got some help locally from some other vendors. And that kind of showed people, look, what we can do, this can happen.
I want to talk about Hank, but I want to go back to this question about Friends of the Zoo. Really just a nonprofit of community-minded animal lovers.
Absolutely. They didn't have a lot of money, but they had a lot of volunteer spirit, and so they helped out so much, and we kept kind of doing little things. I had a really good friend from the Knoxville Zoo come down and say, really, I know it seems like, but just do some plantings. Plant some stuff around the zoo. Make it more welcoming. And I'd never thought about that. I was always focused on the animals, but he really helped us open our eyes and see that. And in fact, he helped us build some of the exhibits that we have at the zoo today, but that helped us kind of get started. But Friends of the Zoo just really... Well, just to give you kind of an example, when we decided to have them manage the zoo, we had 6 city employees and 31 part-time Friends of the Zoo employees.
That's a bunch.
Yeah. And we were a lot of part-time. I mean, not, everybody could work. It was, but they were amazing. And that really helped out so much.
So there's some momentum going and things happening.
Yes.
And when you got to the zoo, it was only 1.5 acres.
Yeah.
How do you acquire the rest of that land? Because I think you're at like 14 now, something like that.
Well, you see them taking down. We see a playground that doesn't get used much right outside our front gate. It's up on a little hill, and can we have that because they were going to build a new one? But yeah, so we put a fence around that. You always have to put a fence around it. Once they say you can have it, you put a fence around it, right? So we built a new jaguar exhibit up there that actually opened in 1995, and it was a really big treat. We actually had acquired another jaguar from the same people, so we had a male and a female, and we built a natural habitat for them, grass under their feet, first real showcase of something that we could do to make it
rather than just a cage where people are walking by and going, okay, that's good. So has them in their natural surroundings.
Yes, it was a much better way to exhibit them, and much, much better for the animals' welfare, too. They actually had a pond, and I just ran across, I was pulling some photographs from the past for someone, and I ran across the 2 jaguars, and they were first put in their pond, and it was so much fun to see them because they were swimming and bouncing around, and it was just like they had like a pool in their old exhibit, so it was great.
Hey, we got a new house with a pool.
Exactly. I know, really, and they really enjoyed it.
Well, and related to that, talk about Hank's enclosure, because how long was Hank at the zoo before you got there?
He came in 1976, so 9 years before I got there.
So he's been there a long time. He's behind bars, for lack of a better term. And I mentioned earlier I got here in 2000, and Hank was so identified. He was the zoo animal.
I said if he could talk, I'd be out of a job. It was amazing.
So what was the metamorphosis of his enclosure?
I think that we decided to build that really large exhibit for him. I guess, like I said, that was 1992. Then we built the jaguars. Then we did spider monkeys. And along the way, Hank is still, he's got a nice place, but it's really not a great, it was actually more of like a turnout area where he could go and play. People could still see him, but it just was something we added for his welfare. So it wasn't really an exhibit. And to this day, I don't know why, but this wonderful gentleman who will rise up out of the grave and kill me if I mention his name, called me one day and said, "Hey, tell me a little bit about that zoo you got going on over there." I said, "Okay, and there you go." And he was a partner for up until just this year he passed away, but he was amazing. And I don't know whether he just liked the idea of getting involved in something that needed a helping hand, but he made a very generous contribution. But what was interesting was he made it over 15 years so that each year the zoo received a certain amount of money for capital improvements. And again, that had been a real hard one for me to get funding for.
Yeah.
And so that gave us a starting point and was really kind of what started pushing. He really liked Hank a lot, and Hank would get very excited when he saw him. Of course, Hank, I don't know if he just knew what he was doing, but he was very interactive with public. Hank had a history as being a clown's partner, so that kind of, he really liked, and he'd never been around any other chimpanzees.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. How much, because I'm curious with Hank, how much of it is personality, individual to Hank, and did he exhibit that?
Yes. And I think his background, because he was raised with humans, the chimpanzees that we have now came from laboratory situations, but they were around humans a lot, but not like Hank. I mean, he was one that the guy carried around and,
So he was like someone's pet?
Yes, very much like that.
Interesting.
And so he traveled around. There are pictures, I think we still have him in our interpretive center, of Hank dressed up in a little outfit with some drumsticks in his hands like he's going to play. So true carnival act that went around for many years, but then I think he left him with some folks who couldn't manage him, and then he ended up at the zoo.
And when did he pass?
Hank? Oh, goodness. In 2012, I think. So he was 41.
Yeah, he was 41?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a
That's
full
a pretty
age?
good age. Yeah, they can live into their 50s. Heart disease is rampant in great apes of all kinds, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangs. And so he had heart disease. We weren't as sophisticated with what we can do. Like now we work with Morrow Hospital and we actually do EKGs. But back then he just seemed like he was getting older. And, we lost him one night. Kind of a surprise, but kind of not.
I know in the public there was a lot of sympathy and
Yes.
people. It had to be hard within the confines of the zoo and your employees.
Because it was devastating. He was, like you said, his personality. He would jump up and down and hoot at you and just be so silly with you and run and play with you. Inside his enclosure, you could run outside and he'd peek around corners. And so, yeah, it was a huge hole, huge hole.
What would you put the intelligence level of chimps?
Oh, I'm sure there are some I think are far more intelligent than a lot of people I know. They're really,
Hopefully present company excluded.
No. Don't know you that well yet. No, he is, they're remarkably intelligent. They learn how to, the whole Jane Goodall explorations that went on with learning how to use tools and things like that, they're remarkably intelligent and very quick to learn. The group we have now, and I should mention too, before Hank passed, we did manage to get a group of chimpanzees in, and now we have to go back just one more step. So Hank's out there in his playground, and he's lovely and all. This friend calls and says he wants to help the zoo. We decide to build Gombe Forest, which is a massive chimpanzee exhibit that allows for separation. One can be inside, they can be outside. It allowed us to bring in more chimpanzees for people to see them in a natural, setting where they have other chimps. Hank didn't think much of it. He wasn't interested at all. He would go to the window and watch them for a little bit, but then he'd come back over to his window where all his peeps were, and his, people would come in and talk to him and play through the glass with him. And so he didn't really seem to care very much about that. But when we got the other chimps in, we had to start learning about real chimp behavior. And, they do throw feces, and still do to this day, I can testify to. But that doesn't make them dumb. That just means they don't like you for some reason. Or you came in and disturbed them in the morning.
Was Hank uncomfortable or unknown about chimp behavior because he didn't grow up around chimps?
He had no idea. And so the only chimp he was ever with was the female, who was kind of the matriarch of that group. And she was very calm and very nice. And she came in, and he ignored her completely, and then he walked over and started begging at for us to talk to him. This is inside the exhibit area, so he can actually stick his little fingers out and touch you and beg, for attention. He didn't want to interact with her at all, and she was miserable. She wanted back with her friends, so he said, "Hey, Hank's got all the space in the world he wants." He preferred to stay inside that exhibit. He didn't really want to go to the outside part at all. He's just Hank doing what he wanted to do.
He was just an old happy man.
Oh, he was. He was just exactly. But you have to look back, and in the in the early days, but from what I hear, people threw him cigarettes, people threw him Cokes over the top. He could, throw it on top of the chain link, and he'd open it and drink it hanging upside down. So there were a lot of things, but, in his life later, it certainly was better, healthier, and then he also because they did talk back and forth. We designed it so that they could hear each other and see each other and smell each other, so that was a really good for his well-being, but he was too late in life for him,
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier that you were so focused on the animals and their habitats that your friend in Knoxville said, "Hey, why don't you do some of these things?" At what point after you joined the zoo did you look around and you go, we could really make this something much more than what it is?
I don't know that I certainly didn't ever dream as big as we are today.
Yeah.
I could say that was never a part. I was more and still focused on, but if I saw a parcel of land, because that's what we didn't have, we'd get that. There was a road that ran right down between the zoo and the railroad tracks, and there was a field across the street from this little internal road that had llamas and all kinds of goats and stuff over there, and so I got the permission to close the road because it was a hazard because kids would get out of the cars and run over there, and so we got that close. So we got to take that area and you got to put a fence around it, and then we just continued to kind of grow, but I was always just one step at a time, and, it was hard, but we had two other folks and two other families join in and kind of start helping. So for a change, we had the resources and we're able to think a little bit bigger, but the biggest thing we probably did was in 2003 or 4 when we decided we wanted to move the front entrance. And that was something completely different. That didn't really involve animal exhibits, but we didn't have the amenities we needed. We had 2 bathrooms. We were seeing 100,000 people a year. So that was not working for us anymore.
Yeah. In hearing you talk about Friends of the Zoo and what you're doing and really just trying to find a way to make things happen, it's really that Chattanooga magic of the public-private partnership.
It is, and this city is so well known for it, and I think Friends of the Zoo exemplifies that, and the folks that got involved a little later had more resources, if you will, so they could help us out financially a little bit more. Also businessmen, and they were very much about starting to take that Friends of the Zoo budget and make it more of a business, which really helped a lot, and so by the time we got to a point where it was just time for Friends of the Zoo to take over because they were providing so many resources already, and they were so much better at managing the zoo because that was their top priority, and I had always kind of fought the fight of being the low girl on the totem pole within the Parks Department, which was not a bad thing. It was just we weren't the most important thing because we still weren't a real Chattanooga resource, I don't think.
So today, with Friends of the Zoo running it, it's still a city department, though,
It
right?
is. We're still owned by the city. The animals are owned by the city. All the buildings are owned by the city. So Friends of the Zoo technically manages it.
So, like a better term, is a management company. Makes all the sense in the world.
It does, and the city still contributes to our operational expenses and to our capital improvements, so we're still partnering, and it's an interesting partnership because everything that Friends of the Zoo raises and bills goes to the city, so I think some people don't realize what an asset they are to provide funding so that we can do bigger things. I mean, I've raised, of course, we just recently got a gift of $5 million from the state government. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I still a little, and people say,
hit yourself a few times to make sure it's real.
Yes, and the people are like, "Are you ever going to retire? Are you kidding me? I've got $5 million to spend."
Not until this money's gone.
No, because we were hoping to build a new hospital, and that was just one of those things that we've been working with the city with other zoos in the state, but then Memphis, darn them. You mentioned you were a Memphis Zoo fan. Now, they were wonderful, but they got a grant from FedEx that was, you raise 20, we'll give you 40 million. And it was like, and so the consortium kind of split apart, but our Hamilton County legislature is very, very fond of our zoo. Yeah. And so they've really gone out on a limb. So, looking to the future, we have money to start on our hospital.
Why is accreditation so important, and why should someone who's looking to go to a zoo be concerned whether that zoo has accreditation or not?
Because there are too many people and too many places that are still exploiting animals, that are still housing animals and charging money to come in, that are not caring for them. I think that accreditation, especially for a smaller zoo, really identifies us and gives us that credibility that says, this is a good zoo. They're doing good things. They not only care about their local population and the local collection they have, but animals in the wild are important to us too. And we also provide some funding for different organizations, and I think that makes it special, but it just says that you can know that we've been thoroughly examined, and that they look at everything from our resources, our available funding, what you do in a crisis, to our staff training, and then, of course, to our animal care. And our education is very important in accreditation. You have to be doing something besides exhibiting animals.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about the zoo as a resource to this city, like economic development, education. What do you see the role being?
It's changed. When we first started, we were kind of a tag-along. Once the aquarium was built, it was definitely the tourist attraction, but we've, had people coming because they're coming to the city and they hear there's a zoo, so that's helped. But I guess in 2023, we did a study with the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga on economic impact, and we were really surprised. I wish I could pull a number out of my head right now, but it was much more than we had thought. And when you look at it that way, then it's like, oh, well, we were a little more than we thought we were. And certainly now with the zoo, especially opening Cape of Africa and giraffes and all of that, we know that we're definitely helping bring people to Chattanooga, or helping them stay at least. We like, what is it they say, heads in beds?
Yeah.
That's a part of what we can contribute to, because
it's another activity.
Exactly. And the aquarium has been a great partner throughout this. I've really enjoyed working with the different ones. Andy Wood's brand new from the Tampa, where he's great.
Yeah, Andy's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun, and but more than that, he sees us as a partner, and both of us have agreed we are not in any way a competition, because they're completely different, and so are we. And we look at ourselves as a little bit more, our role is equally important in the community. We're very, I guess, aware of how much we charge and who gets in free, trying to make sure that we're accessible to everybody. And we even have a program called Zoo Accessibility Program that provides free funding to Title I schools and things like that. So that's really important to us, to have that opportunity for people who can't travel to Atlanta or Knoxville.
Got 3 more questions for you. First one, I want to ask it before I forget it, and I may have already forgotten it. What would you tell that average Chattanoogan about the zoo that you don't think they know that they should know?
Oh, I don't think they know how much work we do for them. Within the community, we started a rehabilitation program a few years ago, which is for animals that are injured or hurt in the wild or orphaned. Oh my goodness, it's been busy as a bee. It's a place, if you happen to find a baby squirrel that you can't get back up in the tree, then you can bring it to the zoo 7 days a week, and we'll care for it and make sure that it gets released. We work with other partners.
I didn't know that, because you're right. People will find a bird or something, and they always take it to the vet.
Right.
They can call the zoo or go to the zoo?
You can call the zoo. We have a brand new trailer, courtesy of a couple of great foundations, but it's a trailer that's separate from the zoo. It's inside the zoo grounds, but it's around the sort of back. Well, it's funny to say the back entrance. When I came to Chattanooga Zoo, you came in off of Macaulay Avenue and you drove around to this tiny little parking lot and all.
Yeah.
Now you come down Holtzklein, you come in this amazing entrance. So, but it's right in the back of the zoo over there, and it's been great. We have much more space. We can take better care of the animals, and we have partners here in the community that we've provided some grant funding to that actually will take them and then finish the process. So we take the babies. We had 60 baby opossums. I think we've had that cycle come through twice. So
really?
But we have people who have places to release them. So we sort of triage and then provide neonatal care, if you will.
So if someone wants to get in touch with you about that, or the zoo in general, what do they need to do?
I think the number is on the website, but they can call the Chattanooga Zoo and just ask for the rehab center, or they can just dial the number directly, and I think it's on our website.
Yeah, see, I never imagined a zoo having a department called the rehab center.
We didn't either, and it was funny because people brought stuff to us a lot back in the day, and we'd always do what we could, didn't know much about it, but it was interesting when TWRA, Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, decided to pay us a visit and say, you have to have a license to do that. I'll get you, but I was blissfully ignorant, but then when the Chattanooga Nature Center stopped doing that, it really put a load on us, and we had to get serious about it. Many animals have traveled home with me, and my staff to this day takes babies home and all to take care of them during the night still.
I said I had 3 more questions. Here's number 2.
Okay.
What animal has taught you the most?
Oh, That's mean. I get asked which is my favorite, which is close enough. Taught me them. Yeah, gotta go back to Hank, I guess.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of it has to do with that personality. They're so much like us and the fact that they communicate so much the way we do, but, you know, when we, wow, gonna get emotional. When I came and he was in the situation he was, and then we took steps, and got him a little bit better, and then we opened Gombe Forest, which is like Taj Mahal, for him. We realized that the zoo is kind of changing at that same rate. As he changed, we began to do other things, and the importance and the reality of what we could do for an animal, it was kind of looking at Hank. And so I think he really taught me to be patient, because you have to be, because he waited a long time for that big house.
Yeah.
But he also taught me that I wasn't as special as I thought I was sometimes when he would reach out and poke me hard just to remind me that he was not my best friend. He was certainly liked me a lot, but he still liked Frank better.
And Frank was
the guy that took care of him from the beginning.
Yep.
He passed away several years ago, but he was just more used to him, so it was just funny, yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of people don't really realize the behavioral similarities in an animal and people.
And especially one that was raised like a human, so he was so interactive. People missed him. When he died, people brought pictures of him kissing the glass in front of their kids and all, and it was just, he was amazing.
Well, he was really the emblem for the Chattanooga Zoo for a long, long time. Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all of this possible, and it's our two great sponsors, EPB and Rockpoint Bank. Get EPB fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet, and Rockpoint Bank, your local banking partner, your business, your bank, your future. All right, this is the last question. What would you tell that 25-year-old Darde Long is important for a happy life?
Oh, do what you love. There's no reason. I mean, it was a gamble. I kind of rolled the dice as to whether this was going to be what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I think you have to, and don't be afraid to chase your dreams. Even though it didn't seem like the dream I started with, I stayed with the zoo because of what I was able to do and how I felt a part of growing that zoo and making it better. I'm really privileged and very honored that I was able to help turn the zoo around, but I was just a tiny piece. People like to say, "Oh, look what you've done for the zoo." Well, look behind me, because it's volunteers and it's, donors and things like that that made it all possible. So, but don't give up.
Yeah, and to your point of find what you love, that sounds so simple, and I know it's hard for people to find what they love because you get in conflicting interests. Particularly as your life goes on and your family grows and your responsibilities grow, and you feel golden handcuffs. I can't leave this job.
I know. I was, like I said, I was very, very fortunate, because when I couldn't figure out how to be a vet, I didn't know what was going to happen. I wasn't distraught or depressed as much as I just couldn't imagine what could happen, and look what did.
Yeah, because growing up, that was what you had, what you were going to do, and all of a sudden that's gone. I would imagine that's a little bit like being an athlete, a great athlete who thinks, I'm going to be this superstar basketball player, I'm going to be this swimmer, and then some injury puts them on a different path.
Yeah. Well, my dear friend, Dr. Myers, told me, he said, it's probably a good thing that you're not a vet, because you'd go broke. He says you would give it all away. And this way I've always had at least a steady paycheck, but I still get to play into, I still get to go and watch procedures. So I still get to keep my hands in it.
Yeah. And that passion is so evident, and I'm so glad you were able to come in and join us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're so grateful to people in our community who have let us showcase the zoo or talk about the zoo, because people still don't know what all's going on down there. Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd highly suggest getting to the zoo.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.